but it's helped you to refine your view of who your target customer is.
Breaking down the numbers and going, well, okay, where's the break-even point? Can you afford to be at a loss for the first year or second year? You've got to expect it.
This wasn't in any way artificial. You were absolutely passionate about this trend that came along.
This is something that I need to jump on and need to be. I need to be pioneering this in my town and as my thing.
The idea of having something that replicates as best as possible the thing you're training for, that has value. It's a bit chilly out there.
Out there, yeah. I mean, I've had the log burner on this afternoon, so it's
Nice and cosy.
Yeah, well, I mean, active, chopping logs, getting the kids out with the wheelbarrow and
Very
doing
impressive.
all those bits and pieces.
Well, I scratched an itch this weekend on I need to fix everything. I love DIY if I can fix something, extend its life. And my log burner had too many leaks around it and I couldn't crack it down enough, so that the flames were always a bit too busy. So I ripped off all that braiding you get around the door, and I got some new stuff and glued it all on.
Nice.
I thought, I'm going to really muck this up. I might better do this properly. But anyway, it worked. So I was really chuffed.
Fantastic.
So now it all cranks up and the log burner's got that nice
Beautiful.
lazy flame in it. Yeah.
Oh, I love it. Yeah,
So you had your one going as well.
Oh yeah, I mean, to be honest, it's on quite a lot, whatever time of year really, to be honest. But it's it's a nice thing to get I said I would talk about my kids a lot when I'm chatting to people, but it's a big part of my life, and I get them involved in those things and getting them outside and
Chopping
moving
logs.
Still child labour. It's easy. We're going to move these much quicker if you two get involved.
Great, a little production line going.
Yeah, absolutely. Got to let them use the axe and learn about it.
Are they wielding the axe?
Yeah. Freddie's wielding the axe now, so that's good. He's
Brilliant.
having a little go with that. So,
bet his mum's looking at. Oh my goodness!
yeah, well, we do that when maybe she's out.
Don't tell her. Not listening.
We did a lot worse things when we were kids.
Yeah, sure we did. Yeah. Didn't seem to worry about it back then. Did they?
No,
Our parents were out of sight, out of mind.
Absolutely.
Everything's videoed these days.
Yeah, that's true.
Good. Right, should we do a podcast?
Yeah, let's get on.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the SME Growth Podcast from Wellmeadow, where every week we try and come up with something useful, interesting or new for owners and managers of small and medium-sized enterprises. And we're very lucky again to have a guest in the studio. I've got Tom Mehan back. Hi Tom.
Hi, how are you?
Everyone giving us a break from me and Rich warbling on to our audiences every week.
Yeah, a slightly different voice.
Bit of variety, yeah.
Variety.
Now, some of you may remember we had Tom back on the show back at the beginning of the year, back in episode 154, I think it was.
I think so.
Back then. And we invited you back in again because there's another angle that we didn't get a chance to cover that time, but more from a business angle because you run a business.
I do.
But particular interest, I thought, around your business was that you had the opportunity to make a decision of whether to jump on a trend and really reinvent the whole branding of your business around some external trend that was happening. And I thought, well, this is potentially useful to other people in business. They're already running whatever it is they've set up in the first place, and something else happens, whether that be the war on plastics or green energy or whatever else it may be. And that business has got to decide whether just to play around with it and maybe have a facet of the business to cope with that or take advantage of it, or whether to really go all in and redefine their business to be that thing. And that's what you did. Yeah,
I did. Yeah, it was. I don't know if it did feel like a big decision or not. It wasn't really a snap decision. It just felt like the right decision at the time. So far, it's proving to have been a good decision.
Yeah, touch wood.
Touch wood, indeed. It's certainly something which I consider a lot day to day as well, and the future of it. But again, that's the nature of riding a wave as such, isn't it?
Yeah.
You've still got to enjoy riding it, whilst also looking at what the exit is.
Yeah, what part of the wave are you on?
Yeah.
We are still on the right. So the topic we're talking about is HYROX gyms. And people may or may not have heard about this, but for those in the
I think a lot of people may have heard about HYROX as a company
it's
and as an event.
becoming more and more popular, certainly.
I mean, there's 500,000 people took part across the world in the 24-25 season, so that's massive.
500,000 people?
Yeah, I mean, that's globally, but it's incredible, really, the growth.
Yeah. Well, I remember that one back in Birmingham, back in October or whatever it was last year. Then you said 30,000
Yeah, 30,000 athletes. We're known as athletes. You were an athlete.
I did.
So 30,000 athletes and then 20-odd thousand spectators across the 5 days going through the NEC there, which, it's phenomenal as a business, incredible. And the way that it filters down then to providers like myself.
So let's maybe, for anybody listening who hasn't come across the concept before, brief intro to what HYROX is. How do you explain it to people who ask you for the first time what it is?
HYROX is fitness racing, essentially. So it's introducing people to a competitive environment of the sport that you've always trained for. So they're very accessible and achievable gym exercises built into one big race format. Now, the beauty of it is that it's a standard format across any event that you do across the world. So results, times, events are all comparable, and it's something a bit like a park run kind of thing, where you can look at times against other people your age category, and even the people who aren't interested in the times and are interested in achieving it as a one-off standalone event, are still flocking to it and going back again because they want to get a better time. A bit like park run. Oh, it's not a time, it's not a race. Yeah. There's no one who doesn't look at their time.
No winner, just the first finisher.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So it is an event which involves quite a lot of running, which some people may be neglecting their training, which we can talk about at some point. But the event itself takes part in arenas or exhibition centres, mostly indoors. There's only a few across the world which do like an outdoor run, but mostly it's all indoors, and you'll do a 1 kilometre run, and then you'll do an exercise station. So, for example, a rowing machine or a ski erg or the infamous sled pushes. And all these exercise stations are in order, structured in a way, quite scientifically, if you look into the background of and the research that's done at HYROX level as to what energy systems are used and what muscles are required to push those and pull those things to what you then have to do in the
They're
next
not just
stages.
randomly put
They're not just randomly put together, which makes it quite interesting.
How long now? This
maybe like 2018, 2019 was the first. It was the first sort of launch of it. It's a couple of Austrian guys kind of came up with this concept off the back of years of CrossFit being the leader in competition of gym competitions, so to speak. This became a much more accessible arena in terms of...
So it took a couple of years to get going then?
Yeah, I mean, they had still thousands of people taking part, but nothing like the growth that they had. Like that Birmingham event, I think that's something like fivefold from what there was the previous year. It's incredible, yeah.
So would you say we're not yet at peak HYROX then?
I don't know, possibly not. They're putting on more and more events this year. Yeah. There's maybe sort of at any weekend in the race season, there's maybe 3 or 4 events on at the same time across Europe.
Right.
So it's maybe reaching peak, but I don't know. It's incredible where it could go. But the event itself, there's a 1 kilometre run, there's an exercise station, and there's 8 of those basically, and it finishes with a wall ball section, which is basically squatting and throwing a ball up in the air 100 times, which in front of a load of other people and music and DJs and crowd, and it's a real sort of exciting environment
very well
for people
done.
to be in.
Very well done.
It's incredible.
Having done one of them myself,
well, yeah, absolutely.
So the point I want to get listeners to think about here is not so much about HYROX itself, but that's a great example of how something came along like that when you already had an established business. You were running a gym. You were doing not a HYROX gym, just a gym, and you were doing personal training.
It's a very small gym. It was a gym based in my garage at home, so you could call it a gym. But it was born out of necessity. Essentially, my small gym was. I've been in the fitness industry, 20 plus years locally. Worked in commercial gyms. Worked in events as well and moved through to the events market myself. So seeing these events and taking part in these events, I can appreciate the quality, the standard, the draw, the attraction of them. And my setup at the time was a small gym, probably as big as this wonderful office, but it was kitted out with, a squat rack and a rowing machine and a bike and some weights and everything I would need to train an individual, maybe 2 people at a push in there. And it was working well as a business. That's, what I'd established, a following and an ability to still have new customers coming to me as one-to-one training and helping them. And there was nothing wrong with what I was doing.
So I want to paint that picture a little bit of where you were at then before HYROX became your thing. Yeah. So how did you get into even being the personal trainer to start with? And what was the idea of the business before you'd even thought about the HYROX element? What were you trying to achieve with that, and where did it come about?
So before, going back to studying was always in sport. So study was sport and coaching, and then had a little bit of a sabbatical from probably working in that because I was racing. I was racing performance bikes. I was trying to develop my own not career, but my own hobby was my real focal point. So I was basically working for the necessity of paying so I could go and race bikes. Now, at some point that had to switch, that working became the kind of priority. Commercial gyms were fine, but I was a freelancer there working as a personal trainer. Dropped into the events market, setting up the Shrewsbury 10K. That was a local running event, which still goes now. I'm not involved anymore. That was again a pivotal point for me in the business. Was a turning point where I decided to leave the business partnership and that was kind of just before lockdown. So was it or wasn't it ideal timing? In hindsight, it maybe was the blessing in disguise that it was a reset for everybody of how we train, how we exercise, how we work, how we communicate. You know, we were doing things on Zoom call exercise classes.
Did it mean that your gym then didn't need to have the same capital investment that it would otherwise have done because people were expecting different things?
Yeah, initially, absolutely, because we'd gone to that point of communicating through Zoom classes and charging people just to do some simple one-to-one with that there was a realisation that actually we can do a lot more than having these grand bits of equipment and everything around that we didn't need them.
So actually there's me thinking about the HYROX was the major event. Actually before that was another one which was forced upon you because of COVID and the prohibition of us all being close together. You still managed to keep a fairly fledgling gym going at that point. I mean,
like anyone, it was quite hard for quite a few months until we realised what we were allowed to do and what people's attitudes were towards being close with a trainer or close with a group of people. You know, so that did take a long time to come back, and I think the natural transition of training outside with one-to-one people in the park to then moving into my garage and having that more intimate kind of space where it felt like a nice little gym and a private studio, and people were really happy to come there, and it was a good successsul business.
But you could have carried on doing that then and just expanded that if you like, or done more outdoor stuff, or going to where people are and
the overheads are much lower than what they are now having a gym. But
model, right?
Again, my aspirations always were to have something where I could inspire a few more people and tap into that community group of people to be doing something, and that's kind of when this is where everything sort of fell into place and married up at the right time with me falling into taking part in a HYROX event through a mate who'd previously done a lot of CrossFit.
But to start with, you were a participant, not anymore.
There wasn't. Oh, I need to open a gym. It needs to be this. It was very much like I've always looked for some competition since stopping bike racing. I never really. That was kind of my identity. Yeah. I felt that I was a motorbike racer. That's what I do, and I'm a bit of a PT as well. But that's my thing. I identify as that. Yeah. Now I couldn't do that forever, and I wasn't a professional. It wasn't really. It was more of a hobby. But I came back from that. I never really found the thing that suited me. I'd got various little niggles and injuries, which maybe was my excuse for CrossFit. I didn't really like some of the Olympic lifting. Was never really suited me or motivated me particularly to do that with the CrossFit side of things. This came along, and we went and took part in London, and I loved it. It was like, this is hard, man. This is a real sort of test of your physical endurance, but it's all achievable. I don't want to call it low skill level because that's putting myself and other people I train down, but it's achievable. You can train for it quite easily in a mainstream gym, or like I did. I trained in my garage. I didn't have all the equipment, but I trained in the manner that you would need to do that. So it sounds like
there's a learning point there. If thinking about the subject here of other people who might be faced with the option of jumping on a bandwagon that's coming along, a trend. What you're saying there is something that this wasn't in any way artificial. You were absolutely passionate about this trend that came along. So it was genuine when it came from you to say, I'm now going to think differently about my business because of this. When that eventually came along, because you'd experienced it, and you could tell from first hand that, hang on a minute, this is something quite special. This isn't just whatever you thought of as CrossFit or going and doing a 10K, you'd spotted something. Well,
having that events background in terms of, even from uni, like an events management part that I did at university was something which inspired me to think a little bit more outside of just the gym. Yeah. Excuse me. And then, I was inspired by that first event of how professional it was.
When you went there? You, having run events before yourself, organised them, been part of them, you could have picked any one of those or none of them. But there's something about this that you saw. You thought, hang on a minute, I can bring this into my world, my business, not just be a participant. Yeah. I could be part of the movement. Why was it so?
It's just it's very slick. The way that it ran, there was just the vast number of people going through the door. Organisation was very slick. The branding's really cool. It was, very, very much a cool environment to be in, and a very supportive environment. It felt like a big community immediately. You were interacting with other people you didn't know in the start zone, in the warm up zone. There was certainly that feel of excitement about the whole thing. And I thought, well, me taking part as a participant, fantastic. This is going to be a challenge for me. And then stepping back from it, and all the data you get from it is another thing. Yeah. But actually, as a business, I was like, well, look how many people are involved in it already. And how many people where we are don't know about it yet. this is something I need to jump on and need to be. I need to be pioneering this in my town and as my thing. This could be my identity. I could be the HYROX guy locally.
So you saw something about it is really, really slick. A lot of people going along. So you weren't at the bleeding edge, as they call it. You know, there's very early years when they're still building it up, although it did grow very quickly. You went along and immediately saw something that was starting to reach some level of maturity, even though early doors. And as I say, rather than just being a participant, you thought, right, I'm now gonna consider bringing this into the way I run my gym. That must have been, I don't know how much thought you put into it at the time and what the downsides were and the upsides, whether, you know, because there's going to be investment required to get the right kit. You're going to be changing your brand to something which could disappear next year. How much thought did you put into that, and how much consideration did you get? Whose advice did you get, or was it instinctive you just did it?
Yeah, it was instinctively to go, this is the way to go with. When I was thinking about a studio, I was already thinking about having a studio with some space that I could train people. So when I was then putting together, you know, for example, what do I need to order to put in this place? You know, we build it from the ground up, that we need the decent flooring. We need a sled track because the sleds are involved in HYROX. Yeah. But do we just put all that in, or do we put something different? Am I going to do yoga in this studio? So there's quite a lot of analysis of, and then looking at the competition. You know, we compare to what there is in the town that I'm operating in, and there's numerous different small gyms. And at the same time as I affiliated to HYROX as an official partner, another gym did locally, and I was initially like, I've missed the boat here, because they've got a studio, they've got a facility, they've got a customer base, and now they've got this, and so I had to think, how am I going to do it differently to them? Keeping an eye on the competition, keeping an eye on what they're doing. I did have to consider, am I putting all my eggs into the right basket, and should there be some in another one? And there still is. There's still one-to-one training I do. There's still thought process that we can have a slightly different offering. But I saw that most gyms that were affiliating and most places that were affiliating were doing it as additional to what they offer already, because they had that established market.
Does that mean they weren't thought of as primarily a HYROX gym then?
I think that's right. I think that's personally what my view of it was.
So they were a gym that did HYROX.
Yeah,
you were a HYROX gym.
I'm a HYROX gym. Yeah, I mean, everyone who has this affiliation will advertise themselves as HYROX Training Club. This is part of the...
But to go from your garage then, with relatively low levels of investment required and doing a lot more out on the road, to suddenly take on the space, commit to the lease of that, and then not just say, I need a space that could be a yoga studio and put a few weights in it. You went for a format which had a certain amount of cost.
Yeah, for sure.
You can't just rock up and have a go, right?
No, it's a big consideration for the equipment, for the overheads that didn't exist at home. Was a massive consideration, and that was where I took advice from, from my dad, from some business, some clients who have run businesses, and talked to them about breaking down the numbers and going, well, okay, where's the break-even point? Can you afford to be at a loss for the first year or so, second year? You've got to expect it. Yeah. And, it was tight. The numbers were really, really tight. And it was like, okay, it's a risk I'm willing to take. It's a step I want to try. The lease signing up, it's something quite new to me, of signing leases for several years and thinking, several years? Oh my God. What a commitment. And then, signing off finance agreements for thousands and thousands of pounds worth of flooring. I'm like, and equipment. I'm like, what am I doing? Yeah. So there was a lot of kind of consideration as to, is this the right thing for me financially?
Did you have doubts at that point?
I think based on how much I commit to the coaching and how passionate I was about the sport, I think the doubts were outweighed by my confidence in myself as a coach. I think you've got to back yourself at some point in sport, in life. That I did have enough of a following to go, okay, enough of if a percentage of my clients will come and do that, then that will earn enough to wash its face. Is all it needed to do to start with. I
can't sense that there's a way of trying that out. You can't sort of test the water, really. You're kind of all in.
You're all in. It was all in. It was all in maybe 18 months ago, 2 years ago, really.
You can't buy one or two bits of kit and say, come and try HYROX.
Well, no, having said that, the structure of the studio, there was like some internal walls, and so there was a space which was maybe like 5 meters by 3 meters. That's not a massive studio I have, but that took up maybe a third of the space, and that was something which I thought, oh, hang on, maybe that's a rentable. Maybe I can sublet that to a physio or to and have that addition. But also, what it meant was there was limited room in there, so the flooring was limited, how much I had to put down and how many pieces of equipment I could put in. So, for example, we did put 2 row machines, 2 ski ergs, 2 treadmills. that was all that went in the studio to start with. So it was a little bit of, okay, yes, I'm still committed to this whole big thing, but I've not gone in as much as I have now, where I've kind of, doubled the amount of space by moving that, and doubled the amount of equipment that we've got, because you knew what worked.
Yeah.
And
Well, I think
where's
I
the
can
usable space.
relate to that a bit more as you sort of, they say fire bullets, then fire cannonballs. You do the bit that's affordable, I suppose, to just test the market a bit and see if you're going. And then when you've got the positive results from that, you decided to go.
There was definitely that little bit of a tester, but it was still a long-term test.
Yeah.
I was still committed for something. But the beauty of it is, and this is the future of it, is that it is adaptable. Yeah. So what we have is everything's movable, everything's adaptable. The space, I've moved things around so much in the last year physically to get that optimum working level, so that every part of the studio is used and it's working to make money for the studio. So the
format's working now. And do you see in other towns that other gyms have gone full on to the HYROX branding thing? They jumped on the bandwagon in the same way, or are other people more like that other one you talked about in the town, where they've just done it as a bolt-on to what they already did? Yeah,
there's both really, but there's a couple of incredible setups. Which I'm super envious of, like the size of facility they've got, and they've as much as one of the things that I've invested in recently was the official turf of HYROX. It's all, but it's this kind of marketing and this branding of this stuff that's drawn people to my studio, because I've got the official bit of AstroTurf that they use in the races, and it does.
And that may sound to some people listening quite trivial, really.
It's crazy.
How on earth has that been? But when you're in a competitive space, I suppose, the idea of having something that replicates as best as possible the thing you're training for, that has value.
Well, that's it in a nutshell. That's exactly what I'm trying to do, is replicate the race as best I can from a space which really is a lot smaller and a lot different to what it is on the day. That comes down to 1, the facility, 2, the equipment, and then 3, my coaching and my team of coaches. We're quite small at the moment, but that's, again, the growth of the business will be to bring in people with equal passion, which is kind of the hard thing for me, because you do have to have someone who's the right fit for HYROX, but also for the TM brand, which is something, I don't know whether that was the right decision to put the TM, as in my initials, on the logo. It was something that was quite of a spur of the moment thing when I was doing, when I was originally just setting up as a studio idea rather than the HYROX thing. So that sits alongside it, but having its own identity, I think, is good for the future.
That gives you a way of backing out into something else should it happen. Now, something you were telling me earlier as well, which struck me as a bit a kind of beneficial spin-off from this, but it's helped you to refine your view of who your target customer is.
Hugely.
So whereas the gym was a general purpose gym, you had some general purpose kit in it, and you could go to people's houses and do their PT stuff however they wanted it. You've now niched down, as they say. You've definitely gone narrower and deeper in a particular sector of the fitness.
Yeah, well, I've done 2 things really. I think I've lost a couple of clients who were regular personal training clients and small group training clients who, for whatever reason, HYROX just didn't suit them. They didn't like the idea of that bigger community. They liked the little studio at home. That was the reality of that. I was moving in a different direction to what they were.
Well, you can't please all the people all the time.
Well, you can't, and it's really hard one to accept because of how you build a relationship with those people over the years. I still talk to them. We're still. What are we, friends? Are we? It's great to have those as part of my life, but certainly that niche market of people who are training with intent, training with a purpose, wanting to achieve their first HYROX event, or which most people will do, which I'm sure you will do, achieve your next one, which will be a progressive way of training. Yeah. So there's definitely a market of people who perhaps can look a bit intimidating from the outside at times because they're fit, they're working at high intensity, everything looks like super athletic, and that does alienate maybe some people to go, it's not for me.
Well, it strikes me as very different to what we talked about in that episode earlier in the year of that January get back to the gym or go to the gym for the first time. I don't suspect you've got so many people that this is their first gym experience. No,
there are people who this is mainly their first HYROX experience.
Sure.
Because it is still such a new growing sport that, as I said, there are places in town where you can go and do this. I'm not the only person doing it. I'm not also the only person doing it at intensity. But what you find is
But your focus is that.
But my focus is that, as I said, what you find is that that's what I'm selling, what I'm advertising, what I'm investing all my time and effort as an athlete into. I've done 15 events now in the last 18 months. So
has that changed the way you have to run your business in terms of attracting customers and retaining and the facilities services you have to provide, because you don't have that range of potential customers coming in. You haven't said no to those people, but you're definitely making it more of a product for a part of the market rather than anybody you might want.
Well, that's currently the business focus is that it's very narrow and it's aiming at those people. So has that made it
easier?
It has, in terms of attracting people, it has, because HYROX has done the marketing for me. The boom in this thing on social media has driven people towards me without me having to invest into a particular advertising and marketing strategy or plan at the moment. Now, I know I can't run a business forever like that. So retention has been my focal point, because I've found that actually new customers coming has been reasonably steady through a lot of word of mouth and experience, and it takes only someone like yourself who does it to kind of then be talking about it and passing it on to someone else who might, oh look, where am I going to go and do that? And well, Dave did it, and so maybe I can have a go at that. And
if even Dave can do it,
Dave can do it, I mean, it's fine.
Anybody can do it.
As long as we don't talk about the penalties that you got in the race.
Oh yeah, we'll go.
We're not going to. So yeah, the narrowing of the market has been, I think, at the moment a good thing. But equally, it's kind of a strange thing to talk about, because the market is so broad in terms of who can take part in HYROX. It is a sport for everybody.
But with definitely a focus, because as you say, the look of it is that it looks very hard.
Yeah,
anybody can do it. Just like anybody can do a marathon, right? You can go run in 6 hours, 7 hours.
Absolutely,
if you like. So it is open, but the impression it gives and the sort of customers that are driven towards you are certainly a narrower range than someone with a high BMI who wants to lose weight or is going along out of some sense of guilt, like we talked about.
Absolutely, but I think those are the people also sticking to it as well. So when we talk about, previously we talked about habits and retention, and how do we get people to stick to those new habits. This is kind of a self-fulfilling thing that people are attracted to my studio and my way of training for HYROX, but then it's me and my coach's job to keep them coming.
But it sounds like you've tapped into some more sense of community than you would have at your average gym. And I'm not saying all gyms are like that, and I'm sure there's some where you've got a bunch of people that meet at the gym and there's the whole camaraderie and social element of going to the gym together. But a lot of people go to gyms maybe on their own or with a mate or whatever. They go there, do a class, do the kit and come away again. You've tapped into something which is a global phenomenon, which has got a global community about it, not just the people you go along with. And you're riding that wave a little bit to try and get everybody to be sticky in the service. They want to carry on coming.
Community, for one of not sort of falling into that cliche of we've got a great community. We generally do have people who are supporting each other. I make a big point of being at the events as much as I can to be the face that supports the crew and the team, even if I'm competing. I try to be there. They're long days, they're long weekends, but you'll find that there's other people in the TM t-shirts all watching each other and supporting each other, which is fantastic. And that comes back to them all achieving that sense of they're all in it for the same thing. Everyone's got their own goals. Everyone has their own motivations for being there, but a lot of them are socially, that is their thing now. It's coming to the HYROX thing together. There are other gyms. This is a kind of shift in the industry. I think that there are gyms charging a premium, more than you would think. Well, crikey, that's expensive for just a gym membership, as you might call it. But actually, it's not that. It's not a gym membership. It's not a cheap and cheerful pure gym where you pay 15 quid a month and just go and do your own thing. It is a community of people trying to be educated, whether that's just in HYROX like they are with me for the first instance, or whether it's a broader aspect of everything from health and fitness and nutrition and those sort of things. But there are places which more and more so attracting their own communities. The other HYROX providers in town have their communities. There is a certain following that you get at every place.
But I was thinking even beyond that, which you have locally, there's this global thing as well going on.
Yeah, it's huge.
Movement almost.
Yeah, the global movement of instead of HYROX is massive, and the company is big, and they are investing in their coaches and they're investing in the education of people like myself, of coaches and business owners. They do give us quite a bit back for what we.
So you feel you've definitely made the right decision tapping into this wave as it comes along. You've certainly caught the wave and you're riding it. You mentioned earlier about the potential risks of what happens if that wave moves on and where does that leave you, and you've already said that you've maintained the branding of the TM brand rather than just going completely underneath the HYROX name. So what else do you think you're having to be aware of for that potentially eventual day when HYROX is overtaken by the next fad that comes along? Is it a thing that you can imagine lasting 5 or 10 years? Maybe you think it's going to last a lot longer.
I mean, the future of it is interesting that from the top end, they're trying to make it an Olympic sport. So they're really trying to cement it in the world of activity and sport, much like you say a 10K or a marathon or a triathlon sort of is. There's been a massive resurgence of that, of people doing triathlons over the last few years. So for it to be an Olympic sport at the very top end would be incredible for its longevity, I think. But naturally you're going to there's got to be a drop off at some point from where we're currently moving. So I think it's really important for me as an owner. One of the hardest things, which again we've spoken about briefly, is that I've got to try and separate myself from being the coach of everything to being the business owner and the CEO and the kind of deliverer of the progression of the business, which again is only as good as what the staff I bring in to deliver the coaching at the standard I've set over the last couple of years. And that comes from experience. Some people come because of HYROX, some people come because they know me. Most people stay because they're getting a good service from me and my coaches. But I think going back to what we said about what will happen when HYROX dies off a little bit and isn't the focal point, I will hopefully have maintained my audience that I've gained through HYROX and be able to give them whatever is next in the industry, whether it's events, whether it's just more around the kind of social, like you said, the communities and the little groups, small group training, like yourselves, who I train with the guys. It's a very social community, and it's like the fear of missing out almost, isn't it? Yeah. Who's not coming on a Wednesday night? Oh, they're not here. I've got to make it on Wednesday night, whatever, got to be the one who gets there every week.
Bigger pressure, don't want to be late.
Yeah, so those things are important. So I think tapping into those small groups that are within my big group now is going to be, what do those people need? What are their requirements? So getting to know my audience is going to be, now that I've got my audience, there are a lot of return customers. How do I keep them
Well, let's hope,
happy?
looking on the positive side, that HYROX has longevity to it. It seems to have tapped into a need, maybe a bit like Ironman did for its things, or triathlons when they went through the thing, or go back to Reebok Step or whatever. There's been a number of different attempts to brand up different forms of exercise, but certainly this seems to have more legs than some of the others have had. It's built a massive following, so hopefully the business carries on still riding that wave for a while to come.
Yeah, I think I'm competing in it, and my wife competes in it, and I think that's a good... I see that as a good example as well, that we try to not set the standard, because I'm not the fastest, but I'm competing at my age category.
You did get to the Worlds earlier on this year.
We did go to the World Championships, Dave, whether we'll get there this year, the rise of how many people are doing it and how many people are doing it at each time category break point. Like we talked about 10K, what your first 10K time was compared to what it is now, but how many people are doing it at that speed has become massive. So we're trying. We're going to try but again, I like to think that setting an example shows that my training methods work, show that, like we talked about in our episode in January, that the time commitment it takes to train for something like this can come from someone who's busy, someone who's got a business to run, as well as trying to fit that training in around it.
Well, you're more likely to prioritise something like this when you've committed to that much. You've got events to train for.
Oh, there wouldn't be, well, why aren't you taking part if I'm not taking part? Oh, I don't have time for it, or I don't really want to do that. It doesn't look good, does it?
Yeah. Well, especially when you do it as a pair, because you don't want to let your mate down, do you?
No, of course. That's one of the big things, is we have a lot of people doing it in couples, but also finding someone like-minded at the studio who wants to have a go at it and teaming people up together.
Well, it's certainly working very well for you so far, and congratulations,
Tom.
Yeah,
it's good at the moment.
Brilliant at that.
It's great.
It's definitely got a reputation locally, and you're getting a nice flow of new customers coming in. You've got a few hundred people on your books, haven't you?
Well, we've got, it's the database has grown quite organically, for want of a sort of cliched phrase, but an organic growth of that database, and the return custom is so high. I don't know whether that is, again, one of the risks I had initially had to discuss with a business consultant and with other peers to say, am I just going to run this as a standard gym membership? Because vast majority of places run, a monthly membership fee, annual membership fee, whether it's a commercial gym or whether it's a smaller gym, and now that can range from anything from 30, 40 quid cheap end right up to hundreds of pounds for these gyms that have limited capacity and high involvement with their community. So I was like, where do I pitch myself in that, and what are people going to want from me, and can I offer that straight away? So to use the model I've used, which is a very simple pay-as-you-go, there are bundles of packages you can pay, which kind of ties people into a time frame. Yeah. So some people are essentially paying monthly, but that was always a risk, which again at the moment is working. Now the future again with the business is how does that. Of those hundreds of people who I've got on the database, how many people I see regularly and unique visits we get. Yeah. How many of those people paying as you go as a unique visit would pay as a monthly member? and what would they pay, and
That's
what do
quite interesting.
what do they
That's
expect
unusual.
from me other than just that one or
Most
two
gyms
classes a
do
week.
this subscription model, don't they? And
yeah.
you do end up with that buyer's remorse after a while. People aren't feeling they're getting the value from it. Or if they're a member of a golf club, it's the same thing. And they'll just decide to stop because they don't feel they're getting it. Whereas you've come up with a model which allows people to fine-tune that to some degree.
Well, you nailed it. We're talking about the value. I always try to think about it. Because when I just try and justify to myself and to other people about what the pricing is, and you're valuing that session because you're valuing the expertise and the specificity for HYROX rather than paying the same amount to be a member for a month at somewhere where there's everything and you use nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
you know, so I think people are more and more so aware of what value is and what they value, and that's kind of again worked so far. It's shown with the numbers that people are willing to pay as you go and commit to that. And there are certain sessions which you've got to be a week or two in advance to be hot on the board to get into that class,
Yeah, you have a bit of scarcity in
Absolutely.
the competition. Well, thank you again, Tom. Thanks for coming in.
It's all
Managed
right.
to drag you back for a second
it's great to
appearance
chat.
on the podcast. And this one, very different, more around the business angle. I think we covered a few topics there beyond what we were setting out to do, which was great. Instead of, we covered the bit about grabbing a trend and jumping on a bandwagon and seeing if we can build that into our business without attaching so much to it that it becomes a risk, and it's getting that balance between the two. But we talked there as well about how you build your customer base organically and how you focus on your clients in a niche, and then how you come up with the pricing models that suit them. So interesting stuff there. Thank you, Tom.
Good, no
Thank
problem.
you very much. And thank you again for listening to another episode of the SME Growth Podcast from Wellmeadow. Please tell anybody else that you think this might be relevant for. Pass the word on, tell them in the pub. And in the meantime, good luck with your business.